I'm going to start today here. We've made a copy, and we're in study 1025. It's our Fort Illinois training course study, and we've done work here on the study page, trying to set some things up. Study goals is a little slim, partly because we don't have metered data to take, and we haven't worked with people, but we can add to this as we go along. So people give us suggestions on what to do. Feel free to email that to us, and we'll incorporate that in. But as you look through here, I mean, there's some important stuff here, and some of that is what params version, what NZIOP version. So these versions actually do mean something, because if we do come along later and we say, hey, we've updated energy params, it's now, let's say, 0.40, and 0.40, these things have been changed. And if they're important to you, then you might actually want to go through all the pain and to upgrade. And we've got a different video that kind of talks about that, and we may go through that later. But right now we're up to date in these different simulation softwares. And the key is here, if you edit anything on this page, if you go into any of these edits and you make changes, like say the study goals or anything like that, then before you move on, you have to use this continue button, because nothing will be saved on here unless you hit this continue button. Okay? So if you had this little thing, so tip of the day is make sure you hit the continue button if you have made changes and save things. And that'll work. That'll be important in a lot of these other menus as well. So we come up to a blank study. We have no facilities entered. And the first thing we want to do is go to the master facility list. That allows us access to our facilities. From there, we see that our facility groups are blank. There's nothing here. We do go to the view map and it should bring our GIS up, except for today. Hit the view map, and you should see the difference is that it loads the GIS this time. So if you do run into that, you just close that session and re-log in, and you'll get back to that. You'll get back to assuming the GIS server and everything is up and running, and it's not on your end. It'll load the graphics just as we did here. If you notice when that did happen, it had the Army site layer was missing, and that was my first clue. I saw the World Street Map coming in, but the Army site layer was missing, and as soon as I saw that, I knew I had timed out. Okay. One of the things you'll notice is all these objects are color coded, and there is a legend down here, and you can scroll through and look at that legend to see what the different facility types are. And so like down here we see this dark purple, and we see we have warehouses, and so we can kind of locate our warehouses pretty quick. We can verify that by hovering over the object, and we can see what it is. Now, if you remember, was that how did we get all this information in here with this data? So that we loaded the GIS, we brought it in. We then got the object IDs, tagged all that. We got a CSV. We cleaned it up, hopefully well. We still may find little issues, and we now have the ability to modify that. And that's how we got to this point. And if you do that step and you're careful with it, then this step here in moving right along is very easy. Okay. The next thing you'll notice is you see these little spinning dumbbells in here. This basically is as you pull further and further out, everything gets clumped closer together, and these are just kind of all the buildings that are in that clump. As you move in, it does resolve and break out into buildings. But the other option, of course, is just to turn that off. So if you're really trying to go in and out and you don't want the little grouping clusters of buildings to come together like that, then you can just turn that off, knowing that, of course, if it's a really, really large installation like Fort Hood, that you will have a lot of, you get a little bit of time as it resolves all that data on your screen. Okay, so we got this selection. In this case, we're pretty much going to add all the buildings. These were all put in for that. When we first add that, we can start with a new selection, or we can add the selection. In this case, we'll start with a new selection. We'll come here, we'll select some buildings, and the first thing that happens when the buildings are selected is that they go up into this available facilities list. And this is the data of the buildings. You can add and subtract data and do this. So if for some reason this map is just not working for whatever reason, you still can work with the data here in a text mode. But most of the time, we'll get this back up and running, and it's a lot easier to work with the graphic data, and you'll see that. Now, if we miss buildings or we want to continue adding, if we hit new selection, this will go away, and so we want to use an add selection, and we can continue to add chunks. A lot of times, you just don't want to sweep the whole thing, because if there are lots of little buildings in there, you'll end up cleaning them back out. So either you're careful on the input, or you're going to spend the time cleaning them back out. Kind of your choice. And so a lot of times, and you can do it building at a time if you want. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. And we can also come in here and take large swaths of adding it at the same time, and then filling in the little pieces that we may have missed. When it's fairly everything's on the coordinate system like this, north, south, east, and west, and it's easy to kind of get to them. But when things are at an angle and you're trying to miss some buildings, and this thing is working at right angles, it's kind of hard to get them, so you kind of have to kind of piece it in like that. The other thing is there's several different ways of looking at this data here. Right now it's in Street View. We do have the ability to turn on imagery, and you can then this becomes important when if you want to see how it relates to other structures that are in the imagery. If you want to use that information, just know that there's several different ways to look at this data. All right, so we've got all that added. At this point, we can look through all that, but we want to hit Add to Study. And since we've done a really good job of cleaning that data, they've all popped into facility groups. If there's not a facility group available, it ends up being miscellaneous. And we've done studies where we might get half a dozen groups, and then we'll get 1,000 buildings in miscellaneous because we haven't cleaned the CSV as well. And that's where you can spend an enormous amount of time if you kind of don't do the upfront time to clean it. And once again, remember that that data cleaning thing for an installation is a one and done. You do it once, you do it well, and then you're done with that for pretty much until they make some changes to the real property. Okay, if you notice, you can move this and resize this. You're going to see why in a minute. What we can do is, this is the facility groups, and under the facility groups we can then pop this open to look at the facilities. Now we've changed things up to where we can edit this data fairly easily in this grid. And if we've done our job, we don't have to do a lot, but almost all of these are editable right here, and you can sit there and make all these different changes to it, and then at the end hit save, and whatever changes you made will be saved. The name, the number, the construction date, the conditioned area, the floors, the lifetime, the cost. And then there's the object ID, which is not allowed to be changed, because that's what ties all this information back to the database, is this unique identifier. It's there. There is a reason why it's there, and it's for data cleaning and some of the real hard data where they just don't have any information. That becomes important to us. But I wanted to talk about one field here that's becoming really important to us, and this is the construction date. And I'm going to tell you what that means. We have so first off, let's figure out what this is. Normally, we've got this auto-generated name, which gives us the kind of the facility group name, which tells us if it's existing and what the vintage is. This, of course, can all be changed here. There's the name, and it says auto-generated from the map. There's the facility type. It's an existing. We've included energy, water, and waste. We include these even if we don't have them turned on, because if we don't, and we do turn the water on and these aren't clicked, then all of a sudden they don't show up, and it's really difficult to figure out why. So it's better to kind of include them now. And then the other thing is on the, this says it's going to use the params engine, the NZP sim engine, the NZP sim waste, and that should be your standard default, unless there's some unless it becomes an advanced feature and you know what you're doing. And we talk about that, a mile down the road, because I rarely use that myself, and I do, but it's for special cases. This is also the vintage, and you can see all the vintage codes here. And let's get back to that. And then we have the wall and roof type, and the same thing with the water code. Try to match that up to what you think your baseline is going to be. All right, this is where you mark and unmark the facility group delete. And if I do this and you hit save right after adding it, it'll be deleted right back out. Not a good thing to start with. But the last thing I want to talk about is this construction date. I went into this because this is an existing building, so this construction date is going to be the date that this existing building will be. It's the retrofit date for an existing building, okay? So the construction date isn't if it's existing or it's going to be demolished. It's not the date it was built, but it's the date that the next construction activity will take place on that building. Okay, so what happens when we have those construction dates, and if you notice that it's an existing building with work that's going to be done planned out here in the future, this is where it affects the phasing report. So it's important to get the conditioned area and all this as well, but this construction date right here drives the phasing report. And so we've worked with contractors enough that we know that they like the phasing report, and so we've added that in, and we now have to put this date in. And it's interesting because if you do the phasing report and you do an alternative, you might find that some of the buildings have been renovated and some haven't yet because of this construction date. So that's just something that we now want to take a lot of time and do well. Now the demolished building, the construction date there, of course, is the date will be demolished. And then when you go to planned, the construction date is when it will be put in service, basically, because there can be several years of actual construction, but this is when it's put into service, when the energy is starting to get consumed in this, and everything's coming online. Okay, so that's what I really wanted to point out about the construction date, and you can quickly change those. You can copy and paste these, and so it now goes pretty quickly if you have to walk through these. One of the things you'll notice is that let's say right here that the number of facilities doesn't show up right away until you open it, and that's kind of a load on demand thing. So all this loads on demand. And it does that because if you have 1,000 facilities, and when you pull Fort Hood up, it's lots and lots of facilities. You can either sit here and wait and wait and wait and wait for the whole thing, then start working on it, or you can kind of have little pauses like that where it kind of loads the data. We've found that users prefer the little pauses, and there's pros and cons to everything, but this was the negotiated resolution between those two methodologies. So in recap, existing building, the construction date is when it will be retrofitted. The demolished building, the construction date is when it will be demolished, and the planned facility is when that facility is brought into service. Okay, and then the most important thing after that is to save. And here's the other thing with that save. All right, there's no undo. All right, what's doing right now is it's writing to the database, and so if you've selected things to be deleted, be careful and make sure that you've got everything either selected or deselected. Just be careful you didn't accidentally select two or an additional group that you didn't want or additional facility. They do change color, so you'll see them when they're selected to be deleted. But just like I said, don't be hasty. Just make sure that you don't hit that and you go and then smack yourself in the head and going, oh my goodness, what did I just do? And why do I say that? Because I've done it. About everything we tell you, we've done, and so we understand. This report right here, this is the facility group summary. This gives you all the facilities gives you the number of those in each of the groups. And like I said, since we've taken the time to do this, it's fairly straightforward. Once it's in there, and you've taken the time, and you've in the CSV, and you put the construction dates in correctly, you've planned all your facilities, this becomes a trivial task. It still can be changed, and that's a good thing. But if you put the work in up front and clean that data well, then this is easy, right? And that's the whole thing. And then it's in the permanent layer, and it's available going forward. For every time you start a new study, you can just pop the buildings in that you want, or a group of buildings, or subgroup, whatever you want, pops right in, and all the information's right there. So this breaks it down into each construction group. We haven't. It's fairly straightforward. Also, if you need to switch them, you can still do that. Back on the other grid, you would come back in here. I wanted to hit save and come there, so it was saved. So when I do, I'm going to make a little switch here, just to show you how to find a building on the map, and to quickly move it, and then I'll cancel, not save. Okay. So I did have several buildings sitting here in a barracks, and let's just say that, this one right here was actually a barrack that was supposed to be planned, not existing, and it somehow got in the wrong one. And all I do is change to, and I just go here and I just change to whatever planned facility it is. Hit that. If you notice, it's not in this list anymore. And if I come down here to this UEPH group, that Barrack C is now sitting right here. Okay? And I'm going, where was that again? How do I find that? And this is one of the powerful features here, especially when you have less information, is you use the little view button and you go, well, that didn't really get it. Well, okay, let's zoom in and do it. And then hit it. And then there it is. So that's how you find them on the map pretty quickly. And then if you're not quite sure where that is, you back out a little bit. I'm just rolling the wheel on the mouse so I can roll in and out pretty quickly, so I can get in and out. And then just put the mouse tip on the building to see what it is and what's around us. So you can find your stuff. The data's tied to the map pretty quickly, and you can get back and forth, and you can change this data. And like I said, I can show you. You can move buildings around. You can change the construction dates, so if you get the spreadsheet from the contractor, which says I want to renovate this here, demolish this, and all the different groups. We don't really care when the group is. We just put the date in here, and when I generate the reports, the phasing reports, it would just drop them into those groups, and whatever happened to them up to that point. So it's and remember what I said. I made that change. I wanted to make sure I hit cancel when I did that. So right here, like I said, we've got all the facility groups. We can also click right here on the facility summary, and that lists all the facilities. They're grouped together here, so you'll see them together. You can always click on these headers if you want to. So if you want to make sure they're supported, sort it by number. Obviously that'll change the facility group, or you can go back to sorting by. So just however you want to sort it, you just hit you hit whatever column you want. It'll sort that, You can look through that data. The other thing you do is you can download the data into an Excel spreadsheet. Sure, let's download that. Let's stick it on my desktop. I hit save. It downloads the data. We pop that open, and it comes out by facilities in the Excel spreadsheet. And this does it by alternative. And so if you've got multiple alternatives, as we will in the future, you'll have multiple tabs coming out with this, with different status in here. One of the things I wanted to show you quickly back here, let's go back to status. You notice we got demolish, existing, and we see they're all active. That's because we're in the master. Okay, so the master facility list changes things, and that will affect it through will affect it through everything. And there's also a baseline that is automatically created at the very beginning. So you have the master, which are this was where you do your global changes, and then like I said, then you have your baseline, which is the first alternative. And the difference that you'll notice there is that you'll come down to these planned buildings here, and you'll notice it says 0. So it doesn't eliminate this line. It just says, okay, those aren't in right here. Those are not in the baseline. Okay? Does that make sense? And then if I see the summary, the facility summary, I'll see the same type of thing. So let's do it by status. Boom. Demolished is in, right? But if I go down here to my planned, they're not active in the baseline. Okay? This is the other place to look at that. And you can change this. Just make sure you know what you're doing. If you do, I don't know if you can't change it here. You can change it if you wanted this active. Now you can either change it from planned to existing, or you would go into view map and you can make them active by alternative. Because if I go into the map, in the alternative, it's different. I can't do the same things, and then I can with it in the master, so that it does different things. Okay. If you notice that the planned facilities aren't listed in here. Okay, so it does different things. So just know that there's two different views. So there's the master where you can modify everything, and then you start going into alternatives where you start making your adjustments to that specific case. What we do, and this is just kind of big picture going forward. What we do is we create the master, and then we start working on the baseline, and we carry that baseline through all the way through the entire process, facilities, installations, decision, before we come back and create an alternative. And we do that because we want to make sure that we don't copy things from one to the other, and then we would have to replicate those. So as we're refining the baseline, and we want to go back and we've copied that to the alternative, and we're going, oh crap, I'd have to go into every alternative and make that change. So what we do is we kind of finish that baseline and get it really, really solid before we create that next alternative. Okay, it saves a lot on editing. It's not that you can't, obviously, but it saves a lot on editing time. So if you follow, we kind of try to optimize the path that we take through this.